Stop scrolling. Because the voice inside your head has been talking your entire life. It tells you who you are. It tells you what to fear. It tells you when you're not enough. But here's the question no one asks. What if that voice isn't you? And what if the monster you've been fighting was never your enemy? Somewhere between childhood memories, silent fears, and moments you tried to forget, your mind learned how to protect you. It built patterns, it built defenses, it built stories that still run your life today, even when the danger is long gone. That sudden anxiety you can't explain, the overthinking that never turns off, the feeling that something is wrong with you. What if none of it means you're broken? Because the truth is uncomfortable. Every time you fight your thoughts, they grow louder. Every time you suppress fear, it comes back stronger. Every time you try to control your emotions, you feed the monster. But hidden inside your mind, there is something ancient, simple, powerful, a magical stick. Not magic like fantasy, but a skill you were never taught. The power of attention, awareness, and inner language. In the next minutes, you will discover why fear exists, how your mind creates emotional monsters, and how the very thing you're trying to escape may be the source of your strength. This isn't motivation. This isn't therapy cliches. This is a new way to see yourself, clearly, calmly, and maybe for the first time, honestly. Watch carefully, because once you understand the monster, you stop running from it. And when that happens, the battle inside you changes forever. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The voice that never shuts up. There is a voice inside your head that never shuts up. It is a running commentary on everything you experience. It analyzes the past. It rehearses the future. It judges the present. You may hear it as a stream of words, images, or simply a felt sense of narrative. This voice is not your conscious choice. It is the default activity of your story machine, operating without your permission. Even in silence, it speaks. Even in sleep, it fragments into dreams. The cause is neural necessity. Your brain is an organ built for processing. Its baseline state is activity, not rest. This constant internal dialogue is the sound of that processing. The effect is a perpetual mental landscape shaped by this narration. The consequence is that you are never truly alone with uninterpreted reality. You are always accompanied by a narrator who filters everything through its own lens. Your mind talks even when you want silence. Because its primary function is not peace. Its primary function is prediction and threat assessment. From a survival standpoint, a silent mind is a vulnerable mind. It is not monitoring for danger, social slights, or opportunities. So the voice continues. It replays an awkward conversation from yesterday. It crafts a perfect argument you will never deliver. It worries about a task next week. Each of these is a story. The cause is evolutionary programming geared towards problem solving. The effect is a mental environment of perpetual rehearsal and review. For example, you lie in bed trying to sleep. Your conscious desire is for quiet. But the voice dissects the day's interactions, imagining different outcomes. This is not helpful. It is simply the machine running its programs because it does not have an off switch. The consequence is that your subjective experience of life is dominated by this secondary narration, often more than by the primary events themselves. This creates a profound illusion of control. The voice gives you the impression that you are directing your inner world. You believe you are thinking your thoughts. In reality, you are often listening to them. The voice generates options, anxieties, and plans. You then engage with one of its offerings, believing you initiated it. This is the illusion. You are like a rider on a horse, believing you are in command because you hold the reins. But the horse has its own instincts, its own direction, and its own power. The rider often only agrees with where the horse is already going. The cause is the seamless nature of consciousness. Thoughts arise automatically. You claim them as your own the moment you become aware of them. The effect is a reinforced sense of self, of being the author of your internal narrative. The consequence is a critical vulnerability. If you believe you are in full control of your thoughts, you will not question where they come from. You will not notice when an external influence begins to seed ideas into that stream. A manipulative person understands this illusion. They do not need to shout you down or forcefully insert a belief. They only need to make a subtle suggestion that your own voice can pick up and repeat. Imagine a colleague implying, in a concerned tone, that others find you difficult to approach. The seed is planted. You go home. Your own internal voice, your never-ending narrator, takes over. It starts reviewing your recent behavior. It looks for evidence to confirm the story. It finds moments of quietness you previously thought nothing of and recasts them as coldness. The manipulator did not create this detailed critique. Your own mind did. Because you trust your internal voice as your own, you accept its conclusion as self-generated insight. The cause is the manipulator's strategic suggestion. The effect is your mind's automatic tendency to build narratives around available data. The consequence is you change your behavior based on a story engineered by another, yet you feel you discovered it yourself. This is how the voice that never shuts up becomes a weapon turned against you. This leads to a crucial point. If this is happening to you, you are not broken. This internal chatter, this illusion of control, is not a sign of weakness or mental illness. It is the standard human operating system. It is the baseline condition of having a modern brain built upon ancient survival circuits. The cause is simply being human. The effect is that everyone is susceptible to having their internal narrative influenced. The consequence is that the defense does not lie in silencing the voice, which is impossible, but in learning to observe its origins. You must become aware of the difference between you and the narration. You are the one hearing the voice. The voice itself is a psychological process, a tool. It can be a useful simulator, but it is a poor master. When you mistake its chatter for your core self, you give it ultimate authority. You also fail to see when its content has been subtly authored by someone else's design. In everyday life, this plays out in cycles of anxiety and rumination. A person hears a vague piece of criticism. Their internal voice latches onto it. It loops the fragment, building catastrophic future scenarios, social rejection, professional failure. The person feels controlled by their anxiety. But the anxiety is just the emotional output of the story their voice is telling. They are being controlled by their own narration, which was triggered by an external spark. The darkly charismatic individual becomes an expert at providing these sparks. They offer a condemning look that your voice interprets. They withdraw attention. In each case, they supply a minimal, potent stimulus. Your own never-ending voice does the heavy lifting of building the prison. You then live inside the story, reacting to its emotional weather, believing you are facing reality. All the while, the one who provided the spark watches, knowing the walls you feel are the ones your own mind built to their blueprint. Chapter 2. The monster you created without knowing. Some smiles kill by controlling your very mind. This control is possible because of a monster that lives within you. You built this monster yourself, though you did not mean to. It is not a creature of myth. It is a network of fear, woven from your own experiences. Its raw material is your memory. Its purpose was to protect you. Its effect is often to cage you. Its consequence is that it makes you predictable to those who know how to see its shape. Fear is learned, not born. You were not afraid of specific disappointments, betrayals, or humiliations as an infant. You learned them. The process is called conditioning. It is simple and mechanical. When a neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with pain or distress, the stimulus itself becomes a source of fear. A child hears raised voices. Then they experience the withdrawal of love or the sting of punishment. The cause is the pairing, loud voices plus emotional pain. The effect is a new neural connection. The consequence is that loud voices alone, even from a stranger, can later trigger a rush of anxiety. The brain has learned. It has created a rule. Loud voices predict danger. This is how monsters are built, one association at a time. You may fear rejection because a caregiver's indifference once meant abandonment. You may fear chaos because instability once meant terror. These are not rational conclusions. They are survival notes etched into your nervous system. The most critical blueprint for this monster is formed in childhood. Childhood is not just a time of life. It is a period of intense, non-optional programming. A child's brain is hyperplastic, designed to absorb patterns from its environment to ensure survival. The child observes cause and effect in their small world. If a parent's love feels conditional on achievement, the child learns a pattern. My worth is tied to my performance. If conflict leads to violence or abandonment, the child learns another pattern. Disagreement is catastrophic and must be avoided at all costs. These are not conscious decisions. They are survival algorithms being written. Memory here is not a perfect video recording. It is the storage of these emotional lessons and the skeletal stories that accompany them. A memory of shame at failing a test is less about the test and more about the solidified story. When I fail, I am unlovable. The cause is the repeated childhood experience. The effect is the creation of a deep, often unspoken rule for how the world works. The consequence is that these patterns become the default settings for the adult mind. They operate automatically, long after the original danger has passed. Your brain still thinks you're in danger because these patterns are efficient. The brain prefers a known hell to an unknown possibility. Once a pathway is carved, criticism leads to abandonment. Authority figures are cruel. Trust leads to betrayal. The brain will use it. It is a well-worn trail. When a current situation vaguely resembles a past threat, the brain activates the old pattern. It does not carefully check if the details match. It sounds the alarm first. This is why a manager's offhand comment can feel like a parent's shaming. The cause is a present-day trigger that echoes a past wound. The effect is the brain activating the full childhood survival response: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. The consequence is that you are now reacting to a ghost. You are an adult, with an adult's resources, battling a shadow from a time when you were small and vulnerable. The monster is awake, and it is commanding your body and emotions. This internal monster becomes a point of extreme vulnerability. A person with dark charisma is a skilled cartographer of these hidden landscapes. They have a predatory instinct for the shape of your monster. They do not need to know your specific history. They probe with subtle words and watch your reactions. They might test for a fear of abandonment by pulling away slightly, noting if you scramble to please them. They might test for a fear of inadequacy by offering a veiled, constructive critique, observing if you become overly defensive or eager to prove yourself. Once they map the monster, they can control it. They can become the source of the fear, and then position themselves as the only solution to it. For example, if your monster is a fear of chaos, they will subtly amplify the dangers of the world. They will highlight instability and threat. The effect is to activate your ancient survival pattern that craves order. The consequence is that you will begin to see their controlling nature, their rigid rules, and their demanding presence not as oppression, but as the safety you desperately crave. They feed the monster its favorite fear, and then offer themselves as the sole keeper who can calm it. In everyday life, this plays out in relationships where one person feels chronically anxious, never good enough, or perpetually off balance. They are reacting to the monster's triggers. Their partner may criticize their cooking. Logically, it is about a meal, but the monster hears the echo of a parent who said nothing was ever good enough. The adult feels the crushing shame of the child. They may respond with rage or with a desperate attempt to perfect the next meal. Their behavior seems disproportionate to an outsider, but it is perfectly proportionate to the old internal danger they are reliving. The manipulator does not create this dynamic from nothing. They find the existing monster and learn its language. They whisper to it in the dark, using the words your past used. Your own brain, wired for survival, cannot ignore the call. It compels you to act in ways that secure the manipulator's hold, all in a futile attempt to quiet a beast that they themselves are stirring. The monster you built to survive childhood becomes the instrument of your own control. You obey its old rules, and in doing so, you obey the person who has learned to pull its string. Chapter 3. Why fighting your mind makes it worse. There is an instinct to fight intrusive thoughts or unsettling feelings. This instinct is a trap. The very act of fighting your own mind strengthens the enemy you seek to defeat. This is the central paradox of internal struggle. Resistance feeds what it tries to destroy. The first trap is the trap of suppression. When a thought causes discomfort, a memory of shame, a fear of failure, a suspicion about someone's loyalty, the immediate impulse is to push it away. You consciously try to not think about it. The cause is a desire for peace and a belief that you can control your mental contents by force of will. The effect is a psychological process known as ironic process theory. To ensure you are not thinking of the forbidden thing, your mind must constantly check for its presence. It must continuously scan the mental landscape for the very thought you are banning. This scan requires holding the concept of the thought in memory. The consequence is that the thought becomes more prominent, more active, and more likely to surface. Trying not to think of a white bear makes you think of a white bear more often. Trying to suppress a fear of betrayal keeps the concept of betrayal at the forefront of your mental monitoring. The thought gains power and persistence through your attempted resistance. This failed suppression often escalates into overthinking. Overthinking is not deep thinking. It is the mind spinning in frantic, unproductive circles around a central anxiety. It is the story machine, fueled by fear, producing endless variations of a single distressing narrative. The cause is usually a perceived threat, often social or emotional in nature. The effect is cognitive overload. The mind, seeking a solution or an escape from the discomfort, analyzes every angle, replays every word, and imagines every possible outcome. For example, after a brief, awkward conversation, you may spend hours dissecting your tone, the other person's expression, and what they might now think of you. Each loop of the analysis feels like work toward a solution, but it is not. It is simply the repetition of the problem. The consequence is that the original minor event becomes a swollen, complex catastrophe in your mind. You create a dense forest of worries from a single seed. You become exhausted by a threat that exists only within your own narration. This leads to the core paradox. Resistance feeds fear. Fear is an alarm system. When you resist the feeling of fear, when you try to forcefully calm it, argue with it, or shame yourself for having it, you are effectively responding to the alarm. You are confirming that there is something so dangerous that it requires this level of urgent attention. The cause is treating the fear itself as the primary threat. The effect is a secondary layer of anxiety, known as anxiety about anxiety. You are now afraid of your own fear response. You worry about what your racing heart or intrusive thoughts mean about your stability or strength. This creates a feedback loop. The original fear triggers resistance. The resistance amplifies the fear. The amplified fear demands more intense resistance. The consequence is a self-sustaining cycle of distress that can be triggered by increasingly minor events. Your energy is consumed in a civil war inside your mind, leaving you depleted and inward-focused. This internal civil war is a state of profound vulnerability. A person employing dark charisma can deliberately trigger this cycle and then position themselves outside of it as a place of calm. They might offer a subtle criticism or create a minor uncertainty in your relationship. The cause is their suggestive action. The effect is your mind's natural tendency to latch onto the threat and begin the cycles of suppression and overthinking. You will try to push down the worry. You will obsess over what they meant. You will resist the feelings of insecurity they ignited. As you do this, you become more agitated, more confused, and more emotionally fatigued. They then present themselves as the solution. They offer clarity, reassurance, or simple direction. The contrast is powerful. Your own mind feels like a hostile, chaotic place. Their presence feels like order and stability. The consequence is that you become dependent on them to quiet the storms they themselves know how to start. You give them authority over your internal state because fighting it alone has only made it worse. In everyday behavior, this is seen in the person who cannot let go of a grudge. The initial hurt is real. But the sustained anger is often fueled by the ongoing resistance to feeling the underlying pain or vulnerability. They fight against the feeling of being wounded, which keeps the wound actively inflamed. Similarly, chronic jealousy in a relationship is rarely just about the partner's actions. It is fed by the individual's resistance to their own insecurities. They try to suppress their feelings of inadequacy, which only makes those feelings louder. They then seek to control their partner's behavior as an external solution to an internal war they are losing. A manipulator understands this externalization. They will watch for what you try hard not to feel or think about. They will note the topics that make you visibly tense or overly dismissive. These are the points of resistance. These are the doors to your internal conflict. By gently pushing on these doors, they ensure you are always fighting a battle within yourself. And when you are exhausted from that fight, you will be far more likely to welcome their control, mistaking it for peace. Your struggle to be free of your own mind becomes the chain that binds you to them. Chapter 4. Fear is a signal, not an enemy. You have been taught to view fear as an enemy. You see it as a flaw, a weakness, a sign of brokenness. This view is incorrect and it is dangerous. Fear is not an enemy. It is a signal. It is a complex message from your oldest survival systems. The problem is not the signal itself. The problem is in the catastrophic misinterpretation of its meaning. When you mistake the signal for the enemy, you create an internal war. This war leaves you exhausted, confused, and utterly susceptible to anyone who claims to offer peace. Anxiety is a messenger. It is not random noise. It is a sophisticated, albeit ancient, communication system. Its purpose is to alert you to a perceived discrepancy between a model of safety in your mind and the data from your environment. The cause is this perceived mismatch. The effect is a cascade of physiological and cognitive changes. Your heart rate increases to pump more blood. Your muscles tense for action. Your attention narrows and sharpens, scanning for the specific threat. The sensation is intensely uncomfortable. This discomfort is not a malfunction. It is the point. It is designed to be compelling enough to force you to pay attention and change your behavior. The consequence of misreading this is that you attack the feeling instead of investigating the message. You try to silence the alarm instead of checking for fire. To understand what anxiety is actually trying to say, you must learn its language. The message is rarely literal. It is symbolic and personal. A rising panic before a social event is not a message that you will die. It is a signal that your mind anticipates a threat to your social standing, your belonging, or your self-concept. A creeping dread about a relationship is not proof of paranoia. It can be a signal that your subconscious has detected patterns of inconsistency, disrespect, or manipulation that your conscious mind has rationalized away. For example, a person feels a knot of anxiety every time their partner says, "We need to talk later." The anxiety is not about the conversation itself. It is a signal. It points to a history where such phrases preceded blame, criticism, or abandonment. The anxiety is a flare, highlighting a learned pattern of threat. The cause is the triggering phrase activating an old memory network. The effect is the physiological dread. The consequence, if the signal is heard, could be a realization about the relationship's toxic patterns. If the signal is attacked as weakness, the consequence is self-blame and continued exposure to the threat. Reading emotional messages correctly requires a shift from judgment to curiosity. An emotion is data. It is information about your internal state in reaction to the world. The first step is to name the sensation without evaluation. This is not "I am having stupid, irrational fear." This is "I am detecting a surge of anxiety." The second step is to locate it physically. Is it a tight chest, a churning stomach, a feeling of static in the limbs? This grounds the feeling in the body, separating it from the catastrophic stories the mind instantly produces. The third step is to ask a simple, analytical question. What is the simplest, most immediate threat that my system could be reacting to? The answer is often mundane. It may be a fear of being late, of disappointing someone, of appearing foolish, or of losing a small amount of control. The cause is the perception of that minor threat. The effect is an emotional and bodily response that is often disproportionate because it is amplified by old, similar memories. The consequence of this decoding is that the vast, shapeless terror breaks down into a specific, manageable concern. It transforms from a tsunami that drowns you into a map showing a hazardous but navigable stretch of road. This process is how you turn panic into information. Panic is a signal at maximum volume. It is the body's full emergency broadcast, overriding all other systems. In a state of panic, the thinking brain is temporarily sidelined. The goal is not to think your way out in the moment, but to use the aftermath. Once the wave passes, you conduct a forensic analysis. You retrace the steps. What was the immediate trigger? What was the story my mind told in that instant? What old memory or fear does this story connect to? This turns the traumatic event into a source of intelligence. For instance, a person has a panic attack after their boss emails them asking for a quick chat. Afterward, they analyze. The trigger was the email. The instant story was I am in trouble and will be humiliated. The old memory was a father who summoned them for chats that were always punitive lectures. The information is clear. Their system conflates authority figures with unpredictable punishment. The cause is a conditioned neural link. The effect is a disabling panic response in professionally normal situations. The consequence of acquiring this information is power. It allows for preparation and differentiation between past ghosts and present reality. This analytical approach is what the darkly charismatic individual seeks to prevent. Their power relies on you misreading your own signals. They need you to see your fear as proof of your instability, not as a clue about their behavior. They will deliberately create environments of subtle, persistent uncertainty. This uncertainty triggers low-grade chronic anxiety in you. If you then interpret this anxiety as your own personal failing, as being too sensitive or neurotic, you will turn inward. You will blame yourself. You will try to fix yourself to stop the feeling. This makes you pliable. You will work harder to please them, hoping to stabilize the environment and quiet your own nerves. Conversely, they may provoke sharp spikes of fear through anger, threats of abandonment, or manufactured crises. In the panic that follows, your capacity for clear analysis shuts down. You are in survival mode. In this state, you will accept any simple authoritative command that promises to end the terror. They become that authority. The cause is their strategic induction of fear. The effect is your natural, interpretable signal of threat. The consequence is your self-doubt, or your desperate compliance, both of which hand control over to the person who orchestrated the signal in the first place. They send the message that causes your fear, and then they sell you the solution to the fear they caused. Your own internal signaling system, misunderstood and attacked, becomes the chain that keeps you bound. The signal is trying to warn you about the jailer, but you have been taught to fear the sound of your own alarm. Chapter 5. The moment you lost control. This control is often secured in a specific critical instant. It is the moment you lost control. This moment is rarely in the present. It is a fragment of your past that never ended. It is a scene your nervous system is still living inside. You believe you are making free choices in the now, but many of your reactions are automated replays of a script written long ago, in a situation where you were powerless. The cause is a past event of overwhelming threat or helplessness. The effect is a frozen response pattern etched into your neural circuitry. The consequence is that your present life is partially run by a ghost of your former self. Past moments still run your present because the brain's primary goal is pattern recognition. When an event is highly charged with fear, pain, or shame, it is stored not as a simple memory, but as a living blueprint for survival. The brain says this happened once. To prevent it from happening again, we will freeze this reaction and deploy it whenever anything similar is detected. The similarity needed is not logical. It is emotional. A tone of voice, a specific phrase, a facial expression, or a sensation of being trapped can be enough to activate the entire old blueprint. For example, a person who was severely chastised as a child for expressing anger may today feel a sudden, incapacitating dread whenever they sense conflict brewing at work. The cause is the present conflict triggering the old, frozen memory of punishment. The effect is that the adult is instantly thrust back into the emotional reality of the chastised child. The consequence is that they will avoid the work conflict at all costs, not as a strategic choice, but as a biological imperative from a past they cannot consciously recall. The past moment is the programmer. The present self is running its code. This leads to the phenomenon of emotional freezing and repetition. Emotional freezing is the body's collapse response. When fight or flight seems impossible, the system opts for freeze. It is a state of paralyzed shutdown. The individual may feel numb, detached, or unable to speak or move effectively. This is not a choice. It is a primal defense mechanism. The problem occurs when this frozen state becomes the default response to any perceived echo of the original trauma. The person freezes in arguments, in moments of emotional demand, or when facing authority. Then comes the repetition. Repetition compulsion is the unconscious drive to reenact the dynamics of the original wound, often by placing oneself in similar situations or relationships. The cause is the brain's faulty attempt to master the unresolved event. By repeating it, the mind hopes to achieve a different outcome. The effect is a life marked by recurring cycles of the same pain. A person who had a distant critical parent may repeatedly find themselves drawn to partners who are distant and critical. The consequence is a deepening of the original wound. Each repetition reinforces the neural pathway, making the pattern more entrenched and automatic. The moment of loss of control is recreated again and again. Willpower never reaches the root of this problem because willpower is a function of the conscious thinking mind. The root is held in the subconscious, emotional, and survival-based parts of the brain. You cannot will away a frozen trauma response any more than you can will your hand to stop jerking back from a hot stove. The reflex is faster than thought. The cause of your reactive behavior is not a lack of character or discipline. It is a learned survival reflex operating below the level of conscious decision. You can use willpower to suppress the outward manifestation for a time. You can force a smile or remain in the room, but the internal tsunami of fear, shame, or numbness remains fully active. The effect is exhaustion and a growing sense of self-betrayal. You blame yourself for not being stronger. The consequence is a double bind. Your conscious will is at war with your subconscious programming. This internal civil war drains your energy and clarity, making you less capable of navigating the very situations that trigger you. Willpower addresses the symptom, not the source. This internal division is the precise point of entry for deadly charisma. A manipulator has a predatory sensitivity to these frozen moments. They listen for the stories you tell about your past hurts. They watch for your flash reactions, the topics that make you go quiet, the types of criticism that cause you to shut down, the situations where you become oddly compliant or placating. These are the markers of your lost control. Once identified, these triggers can be used as levers. The manipulator can induce a state of emotional freezing on demand. They might use the specific tone of voice that mirrors a past abuser. They might recreate a scenario of public embarrassment or private betrayal. When you freeze, your capacity for critical thought and resistance plummets. You are psychologically regressed to that original moment of helplessness. In that state, you are highly suggestible. Any directive that promises to end the discomfort or resolve the frozen feeling will be grasped at. The manipulator then provides the directive. They tell you what to do, what to think, or how to be to make it stop. The cause is their deliberate triggering of your frozen response. The effect is your temporary reversion to a childlike state of dependency. The consequence is that you cede control to them, believing it is the only way to regain safety. They locate the unhealed moment where you first lost control, and they make it their operating room. Your own past, unresolved and powerful, becomes the tool they use to ensure you cannot fully inhabit your present. You are fighting a ghost, and they are the one who decides when the ghost appears. Chapter 6. The body knows before the mind. This control operates on a level deeper than cognition. It bypasses your thoughts and speaks directly to your flesh. Your body knows the truth long before your mind can catch up. It is an archive of every threat you have ever faced. Stress and trauma are not just memories you recall. They are living patterns stored in your nervous system. This storage dictates your reactions with a speed that logic cannot match. Understanding this is critical. It explains why you can feel afraid without knowing why. It also reveals how manipulators harness this bodily wisdom to cement their power. Stress is stored in the nervous system as a physical imprint. When you experience a significant threat, your body enters a survival state. Your heart pumps faster. Your muscles contract. Your breathing becomes shallow. If this state is not fully resolved, if the threat passes but the tension remains, the nervous system retains the activation. The cause is an event that the body perceives as dangerous, whether it was physically harmful or emotionally devastating. The effect is a heightened sensitivity to anything reminiscent of that event. The consequence is that your body reacts automatically to cues that your conscious mind dismisses. For example, a person who grew up in a household with sudden outbursts may feel their stomach clench and their shoulders tighten when a colleague raises their voice, even slightly. Their body prepares for conflict before their mind can assess the actual risk. This is not a thought. It is a physiological fact. This stored stress means that thinking alone does not heal the wound. You can understand that a past event is over. You can analyze it rationally. But if the trauma is held in the body, cognitive insight does not release the physical hold. The cause is the division between the thinking brain and the survival brain. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning, is often subdued during high stress. The amygdala and brainstem, which manage threat response, command the body. The effect is a split between knowledge and sensation. You may know you are safe in your home, yet your body remains on alert, listening for sounds that once signaled danger. The consequence is a persistent state of low-grade alarm or sudden panic attacks that seem to come from nowhere. For instance, a survivor of a car accident may logically know that driving is now safe, but their hands still sweat and their vision tunnels when they merge onto a highway. No amount of positive self-talk erases this bodily memory. The impact, the screech of tires, the sensation of spinning, these are encoded in the nervous system. Thinking cannot access this encoding to delete it. This reality underscores the principle of safety before change. For the nervous system to relinquish its defensive patterns, it must first perceive a consistent absence of threat. Safety is not an idea. It is a somatic state. It is the feeling of a relaxed diaphragm, a slow heartbeat, a warmth in the limb. The cause is the nervous system's primary directive, to ensure survival above all else. It will resist any change that it interprets as potentially dangerous, even if that change is psychologically desired. The effect is that attempts to push forward without establishing bodily safety are met with physiological rebellion. This rebellion can manifest as fatigue, illness, anxiety, or dissociation. The consequence is stagnation. You may want to leave a toxic job or end a damaging relationship, but your body responds with immobilizing dread. It clings to the familiar stress because it has learned to navigate it. The unknown represents a threat that the body is not prepared to face. For example, a person in an emotionally abusive partnership may intellectually decide to leave, but when they try to pack a bag, they are overcome with nausea and vertigo. Their body, conditioned to associate independence with punishment or abandonment, sabotages the action. The mind wills, but the body refuses. In the realm of dark charisma, this bodily knowledge is a precise instrument of control. A manipulator learns to read your physiological signals. They observe the slight tremor in your hand, the way you cross your arms when certain topics arise, the hesitation in your breath. These are maps to your stored stress. They can then deliberately trigger these stress responses to induce states of vulnerability. By using a particular phrase, a tone of voice, or a type of silence that echoes a past trauma, they activate your nervous system's alarm. Your body reacts with fear or shutdown before your mind can intervene. In this heightened state, your capacity for critical thought diminishes. You seek immediate relief from the discomfort. The manipulator then offers that relief. They become the source of calm after the storm they created. The cause is their calculated induction of your stress response. The effect is your body's compelled association of them with safety. The consequence is a powerful, irrational bond. You feel you need them because your physiology tells you that without them, you are in danger. Your own protective mechanisms are twisted into chains. Everyday behaviors demonstrate this dynamic. Consider a person who feels inexplicably anxious in authority figure's presence. Their body holds memories of a critical parent or teacher. In meetings with a boss, their throat tightens and their palms sweat. A charismatic colleague might notice this discomfort. They offer private reassurance, a shared joke against the authority, a sense of alliance. The anxious person's body relaxes in their presence. This relief is physiologically rewarding. Over time, the body learns to seek out this colleague as a sanctuary. The manipulative colleague can then use this dependence to extract favors or loyalty, knowing that withdrawing their support will trigger the original anxiety. Another common example is in romantic relationships where one partner uses intermittent reinforcement. They alternate between affectionate attention and cold distance. This unpredictability keeps the other partner's nervous system in a state of constant appraisal. The body is always scanning for signs of approval or rejection. When affection is given, it provides a temporary physiological calm, reinforcing the addiction to the cycle. The mind may devise excuses for the behavior, but the body is trapped in a loop of stress and relief that is controlled by the manipulator. The body's precognitive knowledge is a survival asset that becomes a liability in toxic environments. It can signal genuine peril, but it can also imprison you in historical pain. When stress is stored in the nervous system, it creates automatic reactions that operate below consciousness. Thinking alone cannot heal these reactions because they are not stored in the domain of thought. They are embodied. Change requires the body to feel safe enough to stand down its defenses. However, a manipulator exploits this requirement. They manufacture insecurity to then present themselves as the sole provider of security. Your body, designed to protect you, becomes the agent of your own subjugation. The smile that kills does so by first unsettling your nerves, then offering to steady them. It understands that true control is established not in the mind, but in the sinews and synapses, in the moments before a thought has time to form a doubt. Chapter 7. Enter the trance you're already in. This control is often executed not through force but through invitation. You are invited into a trance. This is not a mystical state. It is a common daily psychological reality. You are already in various trances more often than you realize. A trance is a narrowed focus of attention where critical thinking recedes and suggestibility increases. You enter these states naturally. The danger emerges when another person learns to induce and direct them for you. Daydreaming, scrolling, and zoning out are all forms of trance. When you lose yourself in a daydream, your external awareness dims. Your internal narrative takes over. When you scroll through a social media feed for minutes without registering the content, your conscious mind is disengaged. You are in a light hypnotic state. Highway hypnosis is another example. You drive for miles with no memory of the journey. Your body performed the task while your mind was elsewhere. The cause is the brain's need to conserve energy by automating repetitive tasks and processing internal information. The effect is a suspended state of peripheral awareness. The consequence is that your guard is down. Your capacity for analysis and skepticism is muted. In this state, Ideas and impressions can bypass your normal filters and enter your subconscious more directly. Your mind shifts states naturally throughout the day. It moves between focused attention and diffuse awareness. The focused state is for solving problems. The diffuse, trance-like state is for consolidation, creativity, and rest. The shift is biological and necessary. The cause can be boredom, repetition, rhythm, or emotional absorption. Listening to a captivating story, watching the rhythmic waves of an ocean, or even performing a mundane task like washing dishes can trigger this shift. The effect is a softening of the ego's boundaries. You become more receptive. The consequence is a vulnerability you are not trained to notice. In a healthy context, this receptivity allows for learning and relaxation. In a manipulative context, it becomes an open doorway. A person using dark charisma is an intuitive hypnotist. They do not need a pocket watch. They use rhythm, repetition, and emotional resonance. They tell compelling stories. They use a calm, assured tone that mimics the soothing voice of a parent. They ask you to recall pleasant memories, which pulls you into an internal, image-based state. They might use repetitive phrases or ideas that slowly wear down resistance. The cause is their strategic use of trance-inducing techniques. The effect is your natural, cooperative entry into a more suggestible state. The consequence is that their narratives begin to feel like your own thoughts. For instance, a manipulative partner might, during a calm evening, repeatedly say in a soft voice, "We're so good together, aren't we? We just understand each other. It's us against the world." The rhythm and the positive emotion encourage a trance. The repeated idea bypasses logical scrutiny about the actual health of the relationship and embeds itself as a core belief. This exploitation relies on you being unaware of your own trance states. You believe you are simply relaxed or engaged. You do not recognize the subtle shift in your cognitive processing. Everyday life provides clear examples. A talented salesperson does not just list features. They paint a picture of you enjoying the product. They say, "Imagine how easy your mornings will be." Or think of the impressed looks from your neighbors. They are directing your trance of imagination. A cult leader speaks in hypnotic patterns, using vague, beautiful language about belonging and purpose, lulling followers into a receptive state before introducing controlling doctrine. In each case, the technique is to first align with your natural tendency to zone out, then guide that state toward a specific conclusion. The alternative is to use trance instead of being used by it. This begins with recognition. You must notice when you are slipping into a diffuse, receptive state. The feeling is often a sense of mental drifting, a softening of your body, or a fixated focus on one stimulus like a voice or a screen. Recognizing this is the first point of conscious intervention. The next step is to engage your analytical mind deliberately. You can ask a simple internal question. What is being suggested to me right now? This question reintroduces a meta-awareness. It pulls you slightly out of the pure absorption. It allows you to observe the process as it happens. The cause of this intervention is the conscious decision to monitor your state of focus. The effect is a regained ability to choose what you accept. The consequence is that you break the spell of involuntary suggestibility. You remain receptive to ideas, but you are no longer a passive recipient. However, the manipulator seeks to prevent this awareness. They will create environments that discourage analytical thinking. They may punish questions, frame skepticism as disloyalty, or flood you with information and emotion to keep you in a constant state of overwhelm, which is itself a form of traumatic trance. They aim to make their presence the only anchor in your dizzying world. When you are chronically stressed, tired, or emotionally dependent, your mind seeks the relief of a trance state more frequently and deeply. The manipulator becomes the trigger for that relief. Their approval ends your anxiety. Their voice soothes your chaos. Your own nervous system, craving stability, willingly hands over the controls. The cause is your systemic depletion. The effect is your increased dependence on their trance induction for comfort. The consequence is that you confuse the cessation of distress they created with genuine safety. You are not being persuaded. You are being programmed in a state of reduced capacity to disagree. The trance is not an aberration. It is a feature of human consciousness. The mind must wander to integrate and create, but this necessary function carries an inherent risk. In a state of trance, you are closer to your raw emotions and your subconscious associations. You are more vulnerable to the stories that are told to you. A smile becomes not just a facial expression, but a powerful symbol absorbed directly into the psyche, carrying with it an unexamined promise or threat. The killer smile works because it is received not by your critical mind, but by your entranced one. It is seen in a moment of letdown, of longing, of weariness. It meets you in the soft, receptive space you naturally inhabit, and it leaves its imprint before you have the chance to decide if you want it. The battle for your mind is often fought not in the arena of your arguments, but in the quiet, diffuse theater of your everyday trances. Chapter 8. The Magical Stick Revealed. This control operates through a fundamental, overlooked force. That force is attention. Attention is not just focus. It is power. It is the magical stick that can build or dismantle a person's inner world. Where you place your attention determines the reality you inhabit. When someone else directs your attention, they begin to direct your reality. They shift your inner states without applying physical force. They use a skill so common it is hidden in plain sight. Everyone possesses this skill to some degree. The difference is in awareness and intent. Attention is the primary currency of psychological experience. Your conscious awareness can only hold a limited amount of information at once. What you attend to becomes amplified. What you ignore fades. The cause is the brain's limited processing capacity. The effect is that your emotional state is largely dictated by the content of your focused attention. If you attend to memories of failure, you feel shame. If you attend to future worries, you feel anxiety. The consequence is that whoever influences your focus indirectly influences your emotions. A simple example is a parent calming a child. They do not argue with the child's fear. They redirect the child's attention to a toy, a story, or a different sensation. The child's internal state shifts because the focus of attention has shifted. The magical stick is the act of guiding that focus. This ability to shift inner states without force is the mechanism behind all influence. Force meets resistance, guidance bypasses it. The process is subtle. It begins with pacing. You match the person's current emotional state. You acknowledge their reality. Then you lead. You introduce a new element into the shared field of attention. A person is angry about a criticism at work. You first attend to their anger with them. You say that was harsh. This alignment makes you a trusted partner in their reality. Then you gently guide the attention. You ask, what part of what they said might be useful, if anything? You have not dismissed their anger. You have added a new point of focus. The cause is the strategic redirection of attention. The effect is the person's mind beginning to scan for answers to your question, temporarily stepping out of the pure anger loop. The consequence is a change in their emotional trajectory, achieved without argument or command. The hidden skill everyone has is this natural capacity for mutual attention regulation. In healthy relationships, it is a dance. One person's calm focus can soothe the other's distress. A shared laugh can break a cycle of worry. This is pro-social and connective. However, this same skill can be weaponized. The darkly charismatic individual studies this skill with clinical precision. They learn what captures your attention most powerfully. For many, it is uncertainty. For others, it is validation, or drama, or a sense of purpose. They become a source of that compelling stimulus. They become the one who resolves the uncertainty, who provides the validation, who creates the meaningful narrative. Your attention locks onto them because they have made themselves the answer to your most pressing psychological needs. Once they hold your attention, they can manipulate your inner states directly. They can induce anxiety by withdrawing their focus, creating a void your mind rushes to fill with worry. They can induce euphoria by granting intense focused approval. They can create confusion by constantly shifting the frames of reference, keeping your attention scrambling to find stable ground. The cause is your dependency on them to regulate your emotional focus. The effect is that your internal stability becomes tied to their behavior. The consequence is a powerful conditioning. You will alter your own behavior to elicit the attention that brings you relief and avoid the attention that brings you pain. This is not a conscious decision. It is a learned survival strategy. Everyday interactions reveal this dynamic. Consider a person who uses the silent treatment. Their withdrawal of attention is a powerful negative reinforcement. The partner's attention becomes wholly fixated on resolving the silence, on regaining connection. The partner may apologize for things they did not do, or agree to terms they normally would reject, just to end the attentional void. The manipulator has shifted the partner's inner state from equilibrium to desperate anxiety, and then offers the resolution. In a different context, a leader might focus a group's attention on a common enemy. The shared focus creates a potent group trance and a unified emotional state of righteous defiance. The leader's power grows because they are the conductor of that attention. The magical stick is deceptively simple. It is the human ability to point and say, "Look here." The power lies in what here is, and who gets to choose it. When you are unaware of this mechanism, you believe your attention is your own. You believe your emotions are your original reaction. But if your attention is being steadily directed toward threats only one person can solve, or toward flaws only one person can forgive, then your emotions are being manufactured. Your inner life becomes a show they are producing. The smile that kills is effective because it captures your attention completely. It is a symbol that demands interpretation. While you are focused on deciphering its meaning, is it genuine? Is it mocking? Is it seductive? Your critical awareness of the larger context dims. Other information fades. Your world narrows to the meaning of that smile. In that narrowed attentional frame, suggestions can be planted, beliefs can be altered. The magical stick is the ability to make you look where they want, so you see what they want you to see and feel what they need you to feel. Your own capacity for connection and empathy, the very skill that bonds humans, is turned inward against you. It is used to make you a collaborator in your own psychological confinement. Chapter 9. Words that control inner reality. Words are not just descriptions. They are instructions. The most powerful words are the ones you speak to yourself in the privacy of your own thoughts. This inner dialogue, your self-talk, is the continuous programming of your emotional experience. The words you choose become the reality you feel. This process is so seamless, you mistake it for truth. When another person learns the language of your inner world, they can write the program for you. Your self-talk directly programs your emotion. Every thought is a sentence. Every sentence has a structure and a vocabulary. This structure shapes feeling. Consider a common event. A friend does not return your text. The event is neutral. Your self-talk interprets it. If the inner sentence is, "They are busy," the emotion might be mild neutrality. If the inner sentence is, "They are ignoring me," the emotion shifts to hurt. If the sentence is, "I have done something to upset them," the emotion becomes anxiety. The cause is the external event. The effect is the specific linguistic framing you apply. The consequence is the emotional reality you then inhabit. You are not reacting to the silence. You are reacting to the story you built with words. Your internal narrator uses language to label, judge, and predict. Each label carries an emotional charge. The word rejection triggers a different biochemical cascade than the word misunderstanding. Your mind obeys the command of the words you use. Language is therefore a psychological tool. It is the interface between experience and feeling. Words are not neutral symbols. They are containers loaded with personal and cultural history. When you name a feeling, you give it boundaries and a category. This can be helpful. It can also be a trap. The tool can be taken from your hands. A manipulative person uses language with surgical intent. They know that by controlling the dictionary of a relationship or a situation, they control how it is experienced. They will introduce and repeat specific loaded words. They might label your reasonable caution as paranoia. They might frame their controlling behavior as protection. They might call your desire for autonomy selfishness. The cause is their strategic definition of terms. The effect is your gradual adoption of this vocabulary to describe your own experience. The consequence is that you begin to see yourself and your reactions through their linguistic filter. You start to believe you are paranoid, that you need protection, that you are selfish. Your inner voice begins to use their words, and thus their definitions. This leads to the core mechanism. Changing the story changes the feeling. Since emotions follow narrative, altering the narrative alters the emotional output. In a therapeutic context, this is a path to healing. In a manipulative context, it is a path to subjugation. The manipulator becomes the editor of your internal story. They do not need to change the facts. They need to change the emphasis, the perspective, and the moral of the tale. For example, after a conflict they started, they might say, "Look how upset you got. This shows how deeply you need to work on your temper." The facts are the conflict and your reaction. The story they are imposing is that your reaction is the primary problem, rooted in your flawed character. Your attention is redirected from their provocation to your failure. If you accept this story, your feeling shifts from justified anger to shame. The cause is their reframing of the event's meaning. The effect is your internalization of that frame. The consequence is a transfer of responsibility and a distortion of your own emotional compass. Everyday life is filled with examples of this linguistic control. A person in a demanding job may repeatedly tell themselves, "I have to be perfect." This phrase programs constant anxiety and self-criticism. The word perfect is an impossible standard. The feeling generated is inevitable failure. In a toxic relationship, one partner might constantly say, "You're so sensitive." This label becomes a story. The targeted partner begins to doubt their own valid emotional responses. They learn to suppress their feelings because the story they have been given is that those feelings are a defect. Their inner voice starts to say, "I shouldn't feel this way. I'm just being sensitive." The genuine signal of their emotions is discredited by the language applied to it. The process is recursive and self-sealing. Once a story is established through language, it seeks confirming evidence. Your brain, now using the manipulator's dictionary, will scan your memory and current experience for data that fits. If you have accepted the label needy, you will interpret your normal desires for connection as proof of neediness. You will see your partner's withdrawal as a justified reaction to your flawed nature. Your own mind, using the tools of language given to it, builds the case for your own inadequacy. The manipulator merely supplied the initial accusations. Your internal voice does the rest of the work, prosecuting you with their terms. The smile that kills is often accompanied by the words that imprison. The smile disarms and invites. The words that follow then structure the reality within that invitation. They might be words of singular understanding that make you feel uniquely seen. They might be words of subtle degradation that make you feel uniquely flawed. In both cases, they are chosen to become part of your inner monologue. The goal is for their voice to migrate into your head. You then hear your own thoughts in their accent. Your emotional life becomes a performance based on a script they helped write. You believe you are feeling your own feelings, but you are feeling the logical outcomes of the stories they taught you to tell. The power of language is its invisibility. You think you are using it, but when it is weaponized, it is using you. It shapes what you can perceive and what you can feel. Long after the speaker has left the room, your inner reality becomes a chamber, echoing with borrowed words, constructing a world designed by someone else. Chapter 10. You are more than oneself. This control succeeds because your mind is not a single unified entity. You are not one self, you are a collection of selves. These are not multiple personalities. They are functional modules of your psyche, each formed to handle different aspects of life and threat. You have an inner part that is confident, another that is scared, another that is angry, and another that is creative. These parts are not metaphors. They are distinct clusters of thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations that form around specific needs and memories. The cause of their creation is adaptation. Each part developed at a point in your life to manage a particular challenge or survival scenario. The effect is an internal system with different voices and agendas. The consequence is internal conflict. And this conflict is the point of entry for external control. These inner parts operate based on their original programming. The confident part may have formed when you succeeded at a difficult task as a child. The scared part likely formed around early experiences of helplessness or danger. The angry part often guards against violation or injustice. The creative part emerges in states of safety and play. They are not all conscious at once. They take turns dominating your conscious experience based on what the environment triggers. For example, when receiving public praise, your confident part may be in charge. You feel poised and capable. Later, after a critical comment, the scared part may surface. You feel anxious and small. The cause is the external stimulus, activating the corresponding internal program. The effect is a shift in your entire persona, your posture, your voice, your thoughts. The consequence is that you may feel inconsistent or confusing to yourself, not realizing you are switching between legitimate, time-locked versions of you. This switching is why mood swings happen. A mood swing is not a random emotional shift. It is the abrupt takeover of your conscious mind by a different internal part. The trigger is often a cue linked to that part's original wound or purpose. A person might be calmly working when their partner makes a dismissive remark. This remark echoes the scorn of a parent. The angry protective part instantly erupts to shield the wounded child part. The calm adult self is momentarily displaced. The cause is a perceived threat that matches an old blueprint. The effect is the rapid activation of a highly charged emotional state. The consequence is an action or reaction that may feel foreign or excessive to the present circumstance because it is being driven by a past self reliving a past threat. This internal fragmentation creates a state of persistent vulnerability. A person using dark charisma is a skilled identifier and manipulator of these separate parts. They do not engage with the whole you. They choose which part to speak to and which part to suppress. They will offer tailored words to your scared inner child, promising safety and belonging. They will then provoke your angry part, directing its energy toward rivals or critics they designate. They will ignore or ridicule your confident adult self, systematically weakening its influence. The cause is their strategic targeting of isolated fragments of your psyche. The effect is that no single internal part has the full picture of the manipulation. The scared part feels comforted. The angry part feels justified. The adult part feels confused and sidelined. The consequence is that you cannot form a unified, coherent resistance. Your energy is spent in internal civil wars between parts that the manipulator has strategically activated or pacified. Everyday behavior illustrates this fragmentation. Consider a person who procrastinates on an important project. A confident, capable part of them knows they can do it. A scared, overwhelmed part fears failure and shame, and rebellious, angry part may resent the imposed demand. These parts conflict. The internal experience is a paralyzing loop of anxiety, guilt, and avoidance. The person is not lazy. They are locked in a stalled negotiation between competing internal selves. In relationships, a person might desperately seek love while simultaneously sabotaging connections. This is often a conflict between a lonely part longing for attachment and a deeply hurt part that fears and rejects intimacy. The result is chaotic, painful relationship patterns that seem impossible to change through willpower alone. The alternative to this internal conflict is integration. Integration is not about eliminating parts. It is about facilitating communication and cooperation between them. It is the process of acknowledging that the scared part is trying to protect you, that the angry part is trying to defend you, and that the confident part has the resources to lead. The cause of integration is conscious, internal observation without immediate judgment. The effect is a reduction in the violent hijackings of your consciousness by any single distressed part. The consequence is greater internal stability and a stronger, more coherent sense of self. However, this integrated state is precisely what the manipulator works to prevent. A unified self is harder to control. A fragmented self is easily divided and conquered. The manipulator's strategy is to keep your parts separate and at war. They will secretly reassure the scared part while publicly shaming the confident part. They will stoke the anger of the rebellious part while appealing to the loyalty of the caretaker part. This ensures you are constantly off balance. Your internal reality feels like a house where the lights flicker on and off in different rooms. Never fully illuminated, you cannot get your bearings. In this disoriented state, you become more reliant on the manipulator to define reality and provide stability. They position themselves as the only one who can understand all your different sides, the only stable point in your shifting internal world. They create the fragmentation, then sell themselves as the integrator. The smile that kills is effective because it is not directed at one you. It is a multi-purpose tool. To the lonely part, it looks like warmth. To the skeptical part, it looks like genuine charm. To the fearful part, it looks like a promise of safety. Each fragment of you receives a different tailored message from the same gesture. This is why such charisma feels uniquely compelling. It seems to speak directly to your deepest, most hidden layers. In truth, it is speaking to your divisions, reinforcing them. It tells each separate part what it needs to hear to keep the whole system from uniting against the manipulation. You are left feeling simultaneously understood and fragmented, connected and controlled. The battle for your mind is won by the one who can keep your cells from meeting, from comparing notes, and from realizing they are all living in the same prison built by the same warden. Chapter 11. Triggers are teachers. The people who affect you most deeply, who trigger immediate anger, longing, fear, or awe, are not random. They are mirrors. Your intense reaction is a signal. It points directly to an unfinished lesson within you. A trigger is not just a nuisance. It is an instructor. The cause of the trigger is an external behavior that resonates with an internal wound or an unmet need. The effect is a disproportionate emotional response. The consequence, if misunderstood, is that you will either flee the trigger or be enslaved by it. If understood, the trigger becomes a map to your own hidden architecture. Certain people affect you deeply because they reflect a part of yourself you do not fully know, or a dynamic you have not resolved. This is not about destiny, it is about pattern recognition. Your psyche holds templates from your past. When you encounter someone whose behavior fits a template, whether of a critical parent, abandoning lover, or an idealized savior, your internal system activates the corresponding emotional program. A person who is casually dismissive may trigger a deep well of shame if you had a parent who made you feel insignificant. The cause is the match between their behavior and your historical template. The effect is the surfacing of old, powerful emotions that feel entirely about the present moment. The consequence is that you believe your reaction is solely about them, when it is primarily about the unhealed version of yourself they have reminded you of. This process is known as projection. You project your internal world onto the external person. They become a screen for your own unresolved material. Emotional mirrors work both ways. You may be drawn to someone's confidence because you disown your own. You may be repelled by someone's neediness because you refuse to acknowledge your own dependency. The person acts as a mirror, showing you a disowned or unintegrated aspect of yourself. For example, a person who prides themselves on independence may feel intense irritation toward a colleague who openly seeks reassurance. The irritation is a trigger. The trigger is teaching that the independent person has a fragile relationship with their own vulnerability. They have cut off the part of themselves that needs others, and they attack it when they see it in someone else. The cause is the external reflection of an internal conflict. The effect is a judgmental or charged emotional reaction. The consequence is a missed opportunity for self-knowledge and a reinforcement of the internal split. Manipulators intuitively understand this principle of projection and mirrors. They study your triggers to learn what you project. They then consciously mimic the qualities that elicit your strongest positive or negative responses. If you crave validation, they will mirror back an image of you as uniquely talented and understood. If you fear being controlled, they will mirror back an image of themselves as utterly free and indifferent. Knowing you will project your desire for that freedom onto them, they become the perfect screen for your projections. The cause is their strategic impersonation of your internal templates. The effect is you form a powerful bond based on your own projections, not on their true character. The consequence is that you are in a relationship with a phantom of your own creation, which they expertly maintain. Your triggers are not teachers to you in this scenario. They are intelligence for them. The alternative to this ensnarement is to learn instead of react. Learning begins with a pause in the moment of a triggered reaction. The surge of rage, the plunge of anxiety, the flood of admiration. You insert a question. You ask, "What does this feel like from my past?" This question shifts the frame. It moves the event from an external threat to an internal signal. The cause is the conscious interruption of the automatic reaction cycle. The effect is the creation of a small space for observation. The consequence is the possibility of separating the present reality from the historical echo. For instance, you feel a familiar dread when your partner is quiet. The reaction is to seek reassurance or withdraw. The learning approach is to notice the dread and silently inquire, "When have I felt this exact feeling before?" The answer may be the silence of a parent who was preparing to punish. The trigger is teaching you that your nervous system still conflates quiet with impending punishment. This learning process disarms the manipulator's primary tool. When you begin to see your triggers as internal signals rather than external facts, you withdraw the projection. The mirror becomes just a mirror, not a portal to salvation or damnation. The person using dark charisma relies on you reacting, not learning. They need you to see them as the idealized solution to your triggered fear or longing. When you instead turn inward to understand the trigger, you reclaim the energy of the projection. You see their behavior as data about them, but your reaction as data about you. This splits their strategy. They can no longer control you by merely activating a predictable program. The cause is your commitment to self-observation. The effect is the gradual decoupling of your emotional responses from their theatrical cues. The consequence is that their influence diminishes, because their power was always in directing your projections, not in their own inherent substance. In everyday life, this plays out in repeated relationship patterns. A person who consistently chooses emotionally unavailable partners is triggered by the chase and the eventual rejection. Each new partner is a teacher, repeating the same lesson. The individual is terrified of true availability because it brings unfamiliar risks, or they are trying to master a childhood wound by finally winning over an unavailable parent figure. The trigger of longing is pointing to the lesson. Until the lesson is learned, the pattern will repeat. The manipulator inhabits these patterns professionally. They spot the person who is triggered by unavailability and become just available enough to hook the longing, but fundamentally remain out of reach to sustain the trigger. The individual reacts with increased effort and obsession, believing they are fighting for love, when they are actually fighting a ghost in a prison designed by their own history. The smile that kills is ultimately a trigger. It is designed to activate a specific internal program. For one person, it triggers a program of rescue, as it seems to hide a beautiful sadness. For another, it triggers a program of conquest, as it seems to offer a challenge. The smile itself is empty. Its power is leased from the projections of the person who sees it. When you react, you give the smile its meaning and its power. When you learn, you ask what within you is so moved by a curl of lips. The answer to that question is the beginning of your own defense. The trigger as teacher shows you where you are already haunted, and therefore where you are most easily led. The manipulator is merely a guide who uses your own ghosts to direct your steps, convincing you the path was your idea, while keeping you forever walking in the dark circles of your own unresolved past. Chapter 12. The shadow holds the power. Within you exists a hidden territory. It contains everything you have been taught to disown. This is your shadow. It holds the parts of yourself you hide or hate. It holds your raw anger, your piercing need, your sharp jealousy, and your unbridled desire. You believe these parts are dangerous. You believe they are weaknesses, so you lock them away. But a locked room in your own house becomes a prison you cannot enter. Someone else can find the key. The strength you need is locked inside those dark emotions. The cause of this locking is shame and social conditioning. The effect is a fractured sense of self. The consequence is that you are rendered vulnerable to anyone who is willing to embody or to provoke the very things you deny. The parts you hide or hate are not eliminated by your rejection. They are pushed into the unconscious. From there, they operate autonomously. They influence your choices without your conscious consent. You may hide a deep need for dependency, labeling it as weakness. This hidden need may then manifest as a pattern of choosing partners who are overly controlling, allowing you to be dependent while pretending you are not. You may hate your own capacity for ruthless assertion. This hatred may cause you to be passive in conflicts, only to later experience bursts of passive-aggressive behavior. The cause is the disowning of a fundamental aspect of your humanity. The effect is a loss of control over that aspect's expression. The consequence is a life lived in reaction to your own shadow, often in ways that create the very situations you fear. This disowned shadow is a source of immense, untapped power. Strength is locked inside dark emotions because they contain pure energy and clear information. Anger holds the power of boundary setting. Jealousy holds the power of clarifying what you truly value. Fear holds the power of intuitive warning. Sadness holds the power of signaling loss and the need for care. When you lock these away, you do not get rid of the energy. You only lose the ability to direct it consciously. The energy goes underground. It fuels obsessions, anxieties, and projections. For example, a person who denies all anger may develop chronic resentment and a victim mentality. The power of their anger is still active, but it is turned inward, creating depression, or it is projected outward, making them see enemies everywhere. The cause is the repression of the emotional signal. The effect is the distortion of its message and its power. The consequence is a trapped force that can be manipulated from the outside. A person wielding dark charisma is a shadow hunter. They have a keen sense for what you have disowned. They will often embody traits from their own shadow without shame, which can be magnetically compelling to someone who has locked those same traits away. More deliberately, they will provoke your shadow to the surface to weaken you. If you hate neediness, they will create situations that make you desperately need them. If you fear your own anger, they will goad you until you erupt, then point to your outburst as proof of your instability. The cause is their targeted activation of your disowned parts. The effect is you are flooded with the very emotions you consider unacceptable. In this state of inner turmoil and shame, you are easier to dominate. The consequence is you may hand over control to them, believing they can manage the chaos of your own shadow better than you can. They become the keeper of your locked rooms. The alternative to this exploitation is acceptance. Acceptance is not approval of harmful actions. It is the conscious, non-judgmental acknowledgement that these parts exist within you. It is the act of ending the civil war. Acceptance is transformation because it moves energy from hiding into integration. The cause is the courageous decision to turn toward the disowned emotion. The effect is the diffusion of its autonomous, sabotaging power. The consequence is the reclaiming of the strength that was always contained within it. For instance, accepting your own capacity for ruthless assertion allows you to access clear, firm boundaries without guilt. Accepting your own neediness allows you to ask for help directly, without manipulation or shame. The emotion, once integrated, becomes a tool rather than a tyrant or a secret. In everyday life, this shadow dynamic is evident. A leader who cannot acknowledge their own vulnerability may create a culture where no one can admit mistake, leading to catastrophic groupthink. Their disowned fear of weakness is projected onto the entire organization. In relationships, a person who hates their own selfishness may become a relentless giver, but their buried resentment will eventually poison the partnership. The shadow always exacts a toll for its imprisonment. The manipulator walks this landscape, collecting the tolls on your behalf. They see the resentment in the giver and offer them a secret outlet for it. They see the hidden grandiosity in the meek and offer them a reflected glory. They speak the language of your shadow, promising to fulfill its wishes if you will only obey. The smile that kills is a shadow smile. It hints at a knowledge of the hidden things. It seems to say, "I see what you have locked away, and I am not afraid of it." This feels like profound acceptance. It can be a trick. It is often an invitation to project your shadow onto them, to see them as the holder of your forbidden power. Once you do that, you grant them authority over that part of your soul. True acceptance must be an internal process. It is the slow, difficult work of bringing light to the locked rooms yourself, not handing the key to a charming stranger. Your shadow holds power because it is pure, undiluted life energy. When you disown it, that energy is available for anyone else to harness and use against you. When you accept it, that energy returns to you. It becomes fuel for your own will, fortifying you against the very charms that seek to weaponize your own hidden self against you. The final control is never established over those who have made peace with their own darkness. Chapter 13. Stop trying to fix yourself. The relentless pursuit of self-improvement is not always a path to freedom. It can be a cage. The constant effort to fix yourself creates a permanent state of self-rejection. This state is one of profound vulnerability. The cause is the belief that you are fundamentally flawed and must be renovated. The effect is a fractured attention, split between experiencing life and critically monitoring your performance in it. The consequence is exhaustion and a porous sense of self, easily reshaped by anyone who claims to have the blueprint for the new you. The pursuit of self-improvement often fails because it is based on a premise of war. You declare war on your own being. You identify traits as enemies: your laziness, your anxiety, your shyness, your anger. You then employ willpower as your army. This creates an internal conflict. The parts of you labeled as flaws are not eliminated. They are survival strategies with historical purpose. When you attack them, they defend themselves. They create sabotage. The cause is a misunderstanding of how change occurs. Sustainable change does not come from self-violence. The effect is a cycle of intense effort followed by collapse, guilt, and renewed effort. For example, a person battling procrastination may force themselves into rigid schedules. The rebellious part of them, feeling controlled and disrespected, eventually undermines the schedule entirely. The consequence is a reinforcement of the original belief: I am broken, I need to try harder. This cycle of failure and renewed effort makes you desperate for an external savior, an expert who can finally win your internal war. This desperation is the point of entry. A person using dark charisma presents themselves as that expert. They offer a clear, authoritative path to the fixed self you desire. They frame your natural emotions and reactions as programming errors to be corrected. Your anxiety is not a signal. It is a glitch they will help you delete. Your need for connection is not human. It is neediness they will train out of you. The cause is your pre-existing state of self-rejection. The effect is your willingness to surrender your judgment to their system. The consequence is that your sense of self becomes contingent on their approval of your progress. They hold the measuring stick. You are always slightly inadequate, always in need of their next lesson, their next piece of corrective feedback. Your journey of self-improvement becomes a journey of dependency. The alternative to this exhausting campaign is presence over effort. Presence is the act of observing your experience without immediately trying to change it. It is not passive. It is a disciplined, neutral attention. Instead of trying to fix a feeling of anxiety, you simply notice it. You feel its texture in your body. You observe the thoughts it generates without fusing with them. The cause of this shift is the decision to cease the war. The effect is a disruption of the automatic cycle, where a feeling triggers a story, which triggers a negative judgment, which triggers a futile fixing effort. The consequence is a space. In that space, the emotion often loses its compulsive power. It is seen, and in being seen, it begins to change on its own. For instance, in a moment of social insecurity, instead of trying to forcefully appear confident, you might simply notice the sensation of tightness in your chest and the internal whisper, "They don't like you." This observation, done without judgment, often reduces the intensity more effectively than forced bravado. It allows you to respond from choice, not from panic. This state of presence is what the manipulator works to destroy. They need you in a state of striving, not being. Striving is future-oriented and insecure. Being is present and grounded. They will therefore constantly orient you toward a future version of yourself that is just out of reach. They will praise the potential you and subtly critique the current you. This keeps you in a state of effortful striving, forever focused on a horizon they define. Your attention is pulled from your present embodied experience, which might tell you something is wrong, and fixated on a promised future where you will finally be good enough, but only with their help. The cause is their control of your timeline. The effect is your perpetual dissatisfaction with the present moment and the present self. The consequence is a neglect of your own intuitive, immediate perceptions, which are the very tools that could detect the manipulation. True growth occurs without the pressure of an enforced timeline. Organic growth is not linear. It involves periods of integration, apparent stagnation, and sudden insight. It requires safety and curiosity, not threat and shame. When you pressure a plant to grow faster, you damage its roots. The same is true for psychological growth. The cause of pressure is usually fear. The fear of being unacceptable as you are. The effect is a forced artificial change that is fragile and context-dependent. You may act differently, but the underlying patterns remain unhealed, waiting to reassert themselves under stress. The consequence is a lack of authentic integration. You have a new behavior, but it is not rooted in a new understanding. It is a performance maintained by effort. The manipulator is a master of applying pressure. They create deadlines for your transformation. They imply that your value, or their continued regard, is contingent on you achieving specific changes by specific times. This external pressure replicates the internal war you were already fighting. But now with higher stakes, your focus narrows to meeting their benchmarks. Your own quieter sense of what you need is drowned out. The smile that kills is often the smile of conditional approval. It is bestowed when you take a step toward their vision of you. It is withdrawn when you falter. This operant conditioning is far more powerful than any abstract self-improvement goal. You are no longer trying to fix yourself for you. You are trying to fix yourself for them to sustain the life-giving signal of their approval. Your journey toward a better self becomes a maze they designed, with them waiting at the center, holding the prize of their own affection. The fixation on fixing ensures you never look up from the path to see who built the walls. Chapter 14. Becoming your own guide. The final confrontation is not with the manipulator. It is with your own habit of seeking a guide outside yourself. The journey ends when you stop looking for a map and begin to trust your own sense of direction. This requires a shift from external validation to inner authority. It demands the development of self-trust and a calm internal leadership. It results in moving through life, not against it. Inner authority is the ability to make decisions and form judgments based on your own internal feedback. External validation is the reliance on others to approve your choices, your feelings, and your worth. The cause of relying on external validation is often early conditioning. You were taught that your value was contingent on pleasing others, meeting standards, or avoiding disapproval. The effect is a weakened connection to your own gut feelings and intuitive knowledge. You constantly look to others to see if you are reacting correctly, choosing wisely, or being acceptable. The consequence is a vacuum of personal power. This vacuum will always be filled by someone offering clear, confident direction. The manipulator presents themselves as the ultimate source of validation. They praise your compliance and question your independence. Your inner compass, long unused, fails to provide a strong countersignal. You trade your authority for the certainty they pretend to offer. Self-trust is not the absence of doubt. It is the willingness to act on your own perception, despite the presence of doubt. It is built in small moments. It is the decision to honor a gut feeling that says leave, even when others see no reason to go. It is the choice to decline an invitation because you are tired, not because you have a good enough excuse. The cause of self-trust is repeated experiences where you listen to your internal signals and observe the outcomes. The effect is a strengthening of the neural pathways associated with internal reference. The consequence is a growing sense of stability that is not easily shaken by external opinion. This is calm leadership. Your internal state is not a democracy, where every passing fear or desperate need gets a vote. It is a calm, observant leadership that considers all inputs, emotions, thoughts, sensations, external data, but makes the final decision from a centered place. This leader does not fight the storm of emotion. It acknowledges the weather and decides how to navigate it. A person using dark charisma recognizes and attacks this developing self-trust. They will label it as selfishness, arrogance, or instability. They will create tests designed to make your internal guidance fail. They might engineer a situation where your gut says one thing, but all social pressure points another. When you, in a moment of weakness, override your own intuition to follow their social pressure, they win. They prove to you that your own guidance is unreliable. The cause is their deliberate sabotage of your confidence. The effect is your regression to seeking their validation once more. The consequence is a reinforced belief that you cannot navigate the world without their interpretative lens. They systematically discredit your inner guide so that you must hire them as your permanent navigator. Moving through life, not against it, is the practical result of this inner authority. It is the opposite of forcing, striving, and conquering. It is a state of aligned action. Action is taken not from a place of I should or I must prove, but from a place of this feels like the correct next step. This is not passive. It is highly responsive. It is like a sailor who trims the sails to the wind, working with the elements rather than struggling against them. The cause is a foundation of self-trust that allows you to perceive reality more clearly, without the distortion of desperate needs or fears. The effect is a reduction in exhausting internal conflict. Actions have more flow and less grinding effort. The consequence is resilience. You are not basing your stability on controlling outcomes or people, but on your capacity to respond to whatever occurs from your own center. In everyday life, the absence of inner authority is visible in chronic indecision. A person spends hours researching a simple purchase, reading every review, terrified of making the wrong choice. They are seeking external data to compensate for a lack of internal reference. In relationships, a person constantly polls their friends about their partner's behavior, unable to trust their own assessment of what is acceptable. They have outsourced their judgment. The manipulator thrives in this environment. They become the most confident voice in the room, the one who seems to have all the data and never wavers. Your own hesitant, questioning inner voice seems feeble in comparison. You silence it to hear them more clearly. The smile that kills is ultimately an invitation to abandon your post. It is a signal that promises that the hard work of being your own guide is unnecessary. It says, I know the way. Rest your weary mind. This is the most seductive offer. The burden of self-responsibility is heavy. The manipulator offers to carry it for you. They ask only for your compliance in return. The transaction seems fair, but the price is your sovereignty. As you hand over the role of guide, you also hand over the right to choose your destination. The path becomes theirs. Your inner authority atrophies from disuse. Soon, you cannot hear its whispers at all. You are left with only their voice to tell you who you are, what you feel, and what you should do. Becoming your own guide is therefore a quiet rebellion. It is the decision to reoccupy the seat of your own consciousness. It begins with small, deliberate acts of self-trust. It involves tolerating the anxiety of not having external approval. It requires treating your own intuitions and feelings as data worthy of consideration, not as enemies to be suppressed or invalidated. This process does not make you impervious to influence. It makes you selective. You become able to consider advice and feedback without automatically capitulating to it. You can weigh another person's perspective against your own lived experience and internal knowing. The manipulator loses their power when you no longer need them to tell you what is real or what you are worth. Their charming smile becomes just a facial expression. Their compelling words, just one opinion among the many voices in your own mind, which you now have the calm authority to assess. The control ends when you stop following and realize you were always meant to lead your own life. Chapter 15. When the monster becomes magic. The monster you feared, the chaotic energy of your own shadow, your stored pain and your triggered reactions, these are not obstacles to be eliminated. They are the raw materials. The final stage is not a battle, it is an alchemy. Fear turns into clarity. The pursuit of control over yourself and others is replaced by a state of wholeness. This wholeness is the real meaning of inner power. It is the state where nothing within you is available for a stranger to weaponize. Fear turns into clarity through a process of integration, not extermination. Fear is a signal carrying information about perceived threat. When you stop fighting the signal and instead decode its message, the energy of the fear transforms. The cause is your shift from a reactive stance to an analytical one. The effect is that the physiological arousal, the adrenaline, the heightened senses, is repurposed. It becomes focused attention rather than panicked escape. For example, the fear of public speaking when approached with curiosity can reveal a specific concern, a fear of being judged as incompetent. That fear, once a vague monster, becomes a clear point of focus. You can then address the specific concern with preparation. The consequence is that the fear no longer controls you. It serves you. It highlights what matters. Your internal alarms become a sophisticated guidance system, pointing toward what needs your attention, not just what you should flee. This transformation leads to wholeness. Wholeness is the integration of all your parts: the confident self, the scared child, the angry protector, the shadow. It is not the absence of conflict. It is the end of the civil war. In a state of wholeness, you do not seek to control your emotions or your reactions by force. You acknowledge their presence and listen to their input. The cause is the cessation of internal rejection. The effect is a dramatic reduction in internal noise and exhaustion. The consequence is a solid, impenetrable sense of self. A manipulator cannot exploit a fragmented whole. They need you to be at war with yourself so they can ally with one side against another. When you are internally integrated, there are no rogue factions to recruit. Your scared part does not make secret treaties for safety because it is already heard and respected by your adult self. Your angry part does not launch rebellions because its protective function is valued. This state of wholeness is the antithesis of the control sought by the darkly charismatic. Their entire methodology is based on division. They offer the scared part safety if it will betray the independent part. They flatter the angry part if it will turn its fury on targets they designate. In a whole psyche, these offers are meaningless. The parts are in communication. They recognize the external offer as an attempt to split the coalition. The cause is your internal unity. The effect is a passive immunity to manipulative splitting tactics. The consequence is that the manipulator's words lose their hypnotic power. They sound like what they are: an attempt to incite a coup in a country that is no longer at war with itself. The real meaning of inner power is this integrated wholeness coupled with clarity. It is not dominance over others. It is not unshakable confidence or the absence of doubt. Inner power is the capacity to contain the full spectrum of your experience without being overthrown by any single element. It is the calm leadership that can listen to a panicked inner child, feel its terror, and yet not be compelled into a desperate action. It can feel a surge of rage, understand its source, and choose a response rather than enacting a reaction. The cause is the hard-won integration of your history and your shadows. The effect is autonomy. Your emotions inform you, but they do not dictate to you. The consequence is that you become unpredictable to the manipulator. Their triggers no longer produce a guaranteed, exploitable result. Your reactions become nuanced, considered, and self-owned. You cannot be controlled because you are no longer a collection of buttons waiting to be pushed. You are a complex system with its own governance. In everyday life, this looks like a person who can receive criticism without crumbling or attacking. The sting of shame may arise, but a whole person can feel the sting while simultaneously accessing an internal sense of worth. The two experiences coexist. The person can then evaluate the criticism logically. This is fear turned to clarity. It also looks like a person ending a toxic relationship not with explosive drama, but with calm, definitive closure. The sadness, anger, and fear are all present, but they are held within a container of self-respect that makes pleading or vengeance unnecessary. The manipulator is disarmed. Their usual tactics, provoking guilt, inciting rage, inducing fear, are met with a sober acknowledgement of the emotion and a refusal to be manipulated by it. The smile that kills loses its potency when you have made peace with your own monsters. Its magic was always borrowed from your own disowned power. It reflected your own unintegrated longing, fear, or rage back at you with a promise or a threat. When you have reclaimed those energies, the smile is just a smile. You see the person behind it with their own needs and strategies. You are no longer transfixed by the projection. Your inner world is no longer a haunted house where a charming stranger can pretend to be a ghost hunter. It is a well-lit, fully inhabited home. You know every room. The creaks and shadows are familiar. Nothing is lying in wait to be activated by an external command. The magic was inside you all along, masquerading as a monster. The transformation is complete when you stop fearing the dark within and realize it was only ever the other side of the light. The fear, the fragmentation, the shadow, the unresolved past, these were the points of entry. The journey detailed in these chapters was not a manual for destruction. You were never meant to destroy the monster. Destruction is another form of war, and war within yourself is the very condition that makes you vulnerable. The monster is not a foreign entity. It is a creation of your own history, a collection of survival strategies that hardened into automatic reactions. To destroy it would be to destroy a part of your own functional intelligence. However maladapted it may now be, you were meant to understand it. Understanding is the precise analytical process of tracing the monster's origin. It is seeing the fear as a learned signal. It is recognizing the trigger as a teacher pointing to an old wound. It is listening to the internal voice, not as absolute truth, but as a story machine running on old data. Understanding depersonalizes the chaos. The monster is not who you are. It is a process that happens within you. When you understand a process, you are no longer its victim. You become its observer. You see the cause, the effect, and the consequence in your own life. This understanding dissolves the monster's mystical power. It becomes a psychological mechanism, understandable and therefore manageable. Once you do understand, the need for external magic vanishes. The charming smile, the promise of a savior, the blueprint for a fixed self. These are all forms of borrowed magic. They are tricks that work only when you believe you lack your own power. They offer to control the monster for you, for a price. That price is your autonomy. When you understand the monster, you realize no external magic is required. You hold the key to the mechanism. You can calm the fear by decoding its message. You can integrate the shadow by acknowledging its presence. You can end the internal war by ceasing to fight. This is not magic. It is applied awareness. You become it. The power you sought from the outside is generated within. The clarity, the wholeness, the inner authority. These are the results of that understanding. They are not supernatural gifts. They are the natural state of a psyche that is no longer at war with itself. You become the source of your own stability. You become the guide for your own direction. The magic was always just the latent potential of a fully integrated self. The monster, once understood, loses its fangs and its terror. Its energy is reclaimed. It transforms from a ruler of your darkness into a resource within your wholeness. The control ends not with a battle, but with a realization. The smile holds no power over the person who has learned that the true light and the true darkness both originate from within. If this resonated with you, take a moment to notice where these patterns appear in the world around you. This isn't a conclusion, it's an invitation to see more clearly. Sharing this perspective isn't just spreading ideas, it helps others recognize what often goes unseen. By following and engaging, you become part of a shared effort to question, reflect, and look deeper. Your thoughts, comments, and experiences add real value. They turn awareness into something collective and alive. Seeing clearly is something we do best together. And it starts with choosing to stay aware.